Let's start with Goose, Jack.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have him back.
Yeah, geez. I mean, one thing I know about him is he's always out and then in and then out and in. So if anyone says, listen, he's not game ready, that's usually how he plays his career. So, and ready. I mean, I'm sure you guys watch a bit of training, and the ones who have will see. Just it's like he hasn't been away. And that's what, I sort of repeat myself when I always say these end of season games, when you get to these playoff games, you need your best players fit and available and you need them ready, and whatever happens in the season is just part of that building block. So to have him back, I mean, it's 14 or 15 players who played last week, so it's continuity, and then have him back is a Springbok. He's our number 110. And we got Keegan, who played really well for us on the bench, so it's a good position to be in.
Jack, just the way the box squad that was announced yesterday,
Yep.
probably is obviously the one question. Have you guys had any feedback of anything that why he's not there?
No. And we don't. I mean, obviously he's 54. And as I said to you, Brendan, I mean, that doesn't mean because he's 54 you're out. I mean, there are a lot of changes to the first alignment, to the second alignment. There are a lot of changes to last year, this time to now. So, I mean, I don't think it necessarily means that forever. It's also an alignment camp to prepare, and if you work it out, 54 players for 4 test matches, a lot of guys who aren't going to play in those 4 test matches. So it's not like I've been national coach before. It's not. I mean, he knows. Sometimes he's in, sometimes he's out. They've got that. When they have a guy from Scarlet's in now, it's another hooker. So it's a good position for the Boks to be in that they've got depth in that position as well.
Just on the Sharks, it looks like Evans out as well. Just your thoughts on what they're going to bring and how much that kick-off affected them, maybe all the...
Yeah. Well, I mean, 100 minutes will affect them, and then that just happens. It's just the nature of the competition. It's like if you follow tennis and some guys play for 5 sets, they're obviously more fatigued at the end of the comp if they have 5-set matches week in, sort of week after week or game after game. And then you get guys that win in 2 to 3 sets, 6-love, 6-1, 6-1. That guy's obviously much better prepared physically. So it does take its toll. But, I mean, you say now, even I don't know if Evan's out. I mean, let's be fair, We only see the team that gets here. We can't worry about who said and they said, and maybe, we've got to prepare as though the best team's coming here. And I have said this to you before, that's probably one of the best Sharks teams that's ever been on paper. It reminds me of Peter Miller, Henry Honeyball, Jeremy Thompson, Kobus van der Westhuizen, and Andre Joubert. They're all Springboks. There are not many guys in that Sharks team that aren't Springboks. And in fact, I think they're 15 out of the 54 are Sharks players. So that's not too bad,
Good. Jack, just coming back to one question, how important is it to have him back, given how well the Sharks kicked and contested the previous time they played here?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just important to have him back. It's got nothing to do with the Sharks. It just is important to us. He's been with us now for a long time. He's played, if you consider how many minutes and training minutes he must have had with Emmy at 9 and with Harold at 12, it's lots and lots of time together. So, some would say he didn't play for X amount of time, but if you add up all the minutes, as I said, he's trained and played with those 2 guys inside and outside him. I've got no doubt that he'll be good enough and he'll settle in quickly.
And just your message in general this week to the players. Tomorrow's going to be probably packed or close to packed. Just your message.
That's it.
To the players.
That's it. You've just said it. Close to packed tomorrow. That's it. That's why you play rugby. That's why when you pick your rugby ball up, like your little boys do in your garden, and the one says he's Goosen and the other one says he's Kobus, this is where it ends up. It ends up in these big games. So that's the message. You play rugby to play in these big games, and best players in the world are the ones who play the best in these games.
Cool. Jake, the Sharks back of forwards had a splendid run into the semi-final. What do you expect from them, and how are you going to counter them?
Yeah, I mean, Colin, it's such a big question because, I think that 12 out of 15 in the team are starting Springboks. And I think if, again, top of my head, if you go through, I think the only guys not a Springbok in that pack is, they're 2 flankers. The rest are all Springboks. And not only Springboks, they're World Cup winners. So I'm expecting that. The one thing the Sharks have done consistently is they've played well in big games. You know, whether it was the Challenge Cup final or whether it was whenever they've had a big game, they've played well, and in Springbok jerseys too. So I don't think it's going to be easy, and I don't think we for 1 minute think it's going to be easy. The Sharks have beaten us twice this year, so there's a reason they've beaten us twice, and they've got a good team. So yeah, I suppose what I'm saying is I'm expecting it to be as tough as it can be. And we just got to make sure we play as well as we can, because I've got no doubt if we play as well as we can beat them.
Coach Jake, how big do you think this weekend's front row battle is going to be? I know we spoke to Walker in the week. Obviously, the players won't say it's personal, but how personal do you think it will be for the front row competing with?
Yeah, you know, Ronaldo, it's interesting because yesterday they announced the 54-man squad, and so I mean, you don't have to be too clever to work out. It's like trials tomorrow, you know. And one of the messages I've given the players is, please don't want you to play like it's trials. I want you to play like it's a team, you know. Because often what happens in these situations, whenever you announce a team before a big game, you know, I suppose it happens to everybody. Lions players before the internationals or whatever. So we're no different. There's 54 guys that want to become Springboks, that want to be in the first round. They know they've got to compete against the guys they're playing against tomorrow. And you've been there, so you'll understand. It doesn't matter about what I say. They know that this is an opportunity in front of selectors, in front of public, for them to stake a claim. My job, I think, is just to get them to understand it's not about individuals tomorrow. It's about how we played. You know, I said to them in the change room today, they've been picked on what they did the last 18 weeks. It's got nothing to do with what they have to do tomorrow. That's my message. They're not gonna do anything tomorrow that is gonna make them, you know, put their hand up. They put their hand up already to be picked in the 54-man squad by what they've done for the last couple of months. So I just want them to continue doing that.
Coach, and then obviously looking at the last two games, do you think there was maybe a level of the Bulls not being physical and front up where the Sharks were in your guys' face a lot of the times when you guys especially played here at Loftus the last time? Do you think you guys can match the Sharks' physicality, maybe even better that?
Yeah, we have to. I mean, you've played rugby enough to know that's one of the key elements. You know, if you look at it, you need a tight five, you need a captain, you need a goal kicker. And Doc Craven always said that, you know, and a tight head prop. So I can't go away from that. Tight five needs to front up tomorrow. Tight head prop needs to play well. Our goal kicker has been out for a while, comes back into the team, and our captain needs to make good decisions. I mean, that's one of the fundamentals of rugby. So whether I sit here and go, no, we don't need to, even you know and I know that's how the game gets won. We say the forwards decide whether you win it, and the backs decide by how much, and that's not going to change even after I'm gone. That's how rugby works.
Jake, looking at last week's game, obviously you started slow, made it difficult for yourselves. How do you prevent that from happening again?
You weren't at the media conference last week,
No,
I think Kubis asked me the same question, I think. Was it you, Kubis? Someone asked me the same question, and I said, that's the one recipe coaches would wish they could buy. You know, because everyone says they want to start well, and every coach says, you know, we've got to get, you know, flying start, we've got to put them under pressure. And so there's no secret ingredient or magic one for that, you know. But what I do know is that we started poorly, we needed to catch up. We learned a lesson from the previous Edinburgh game because we were 24/7 down in that game too. And part of rugby, which again is never going to change, is you need to learn from the situations you're in. And that's why teams that play together for so long and players who play together for so long become so much better, because you have scenarios and situations you're in together that you can conquer together. So I haven't got the recipe for how we start quickly, and I haven't, you know, some would say kick off and some would say receive kick off, and some would say, you know, run the ball in the first minute so everyone touches it, but there is no recipe for how you start well and how you start badly.
And then just on the run playing 7, we spoke to him about it this week, and he's obviously still learning and finding it strange sometimes. How do
Did
you
he say
think,
that? Did he find
yes,
it? Okay.
yeah, he says it feels strange to stand out there
Yeah.
wide. How do you think he's gone, and do you think he can play 7 for the Springboks?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I say that because of the fact that we got such good locks in South Africa. And that's what I mean. It's also horses for courses. I mean, if you live in a country where you produce locks like we produced, and I mean, everyone has written about the locks we produced over the last decade. You know, you've got Paul Willems who played for France, and you've got, the list just goes, Eli Snyman playing for Benetton. I mean, I'm talking about locks that have just come through the, the junior ranks. And then you've got 5, 6 Springbok locks that have played for the Springboks and won World Cups. Mostert and Snyman, and the list goes on. Lewitt and Eben and John Klein, and so that's why I think also it's not just about easy as 7. It's also about being fair to a player in our system that can play at a higher level, and it's also about preparing him for more than one position, because one of the things that is also a bit different now is the more positions you can play, the better it is for you, because the game is, it's almost like you don't need a number on your back anymore, because centers can carry and clean, and locks can catch and pass, and where in the old days, forwards had completely different roles. I think the game is just, the shape of the game is completely different now. So there'll be times that he'll be on the edge, and there'll be times when he moves to 5 and he'll have to go into the midfield again, and I'm sure because he's so talented, he can do both.
Thanks.
Jake, against the Sharks, the 2 games that you lost, one of the things that Sharks did very well was the regain kicks.
Sorry, I'm just trying to think, where have I heard of people, I thought it was, someone was asking about it, we lose to them twice in a row. I've heard this before in the media thing. Sorry,
No,
yeah.
I did my homework, yeah.
I'm trying to forget those 2 games,
Yeah, but the point I'm asking is they were very good at regaining kicks, and we were not good at
Yeah.
defending against those kicks. And again,
Yeah.
on the other hand, we didn't chase that well,
Yeah.
or at all for that matter.
Yeah.
Did you address that? Is that something that you're concerned about?
Well, I mean, Willie, Kane and Seb didn't play in those games. So, I mean, it's a completely different battle altogether. We're talking about two Springboks, talking about a 98 test Springbok at fullback. I mean, whether I'm not saying we haven't spoken about it, but just those guys alone, their kick chase, their understanding of where it's going to go, their understanding of what they do when they get it. Surely I'm much more confident that they will manage that differently to the personnel I had before. And again, it's not meaning that those guys were poor. It doesn't mean that I lost faith in those guys. We just didn't have the availability of the back 3 we have today or tomorrow. So it will happen. I think it will change anyway, And, I want to say we lost twice to the Sharks. We only lost 4 games in the pool stages. So I'd rather remember that we had a much better win rate than any other South African side. Scored the most points than any South African side, conceded less points than the South African side, scored 71 tries compared to 55 against the Sharks, and conceded 44 versus 59. So those are the stats I worry about, is that if we can continue that trend, then we got a chance.
I wanted to say I would have liked to play any other team but the Sharks, or the Stormers for that
But
matter.
you don't work in the commercial office upstairs.
No,
See,
I hear you. But
commercial
still.
guys are banging their chests
Yeah.
because there's 51,000 people coming tomorrow.
Sure.
So, as I said, depends what hat you wear. If you wear the marketing department and the CEO's hat, well, then they're loving life because they got full house tomorrow. But as I said, there's always put a smile on everyone's faces because whatever, as I say in golf, every shot makes someone happy.
Well, you're not concerned about the Sharks specifically. You're happy enough.
No, we'd have to. Let's be fair. If the Sharks came, let's put it this way. Let's say the Sharks came 4th and didn't come 3rd, and they would have had to beat Leinster then, and they beat Leinster. We'd have to play the Sharks anyway. So what I've worked out is that if you're going to win this comp, by default, you have to beat those teams along the way. And if the Sharks are on fire this week and they would have played Leinster, we would have had to play them next week.
Yeah.
So.
No, good point.
Yeah, I don't think it's a choice. We have to look at this is the 3rd year we can get to a final, and then the lessons are what did we learn in those first 2 finals, and then as a coaching team, as a group, we need to make sure the lessons we learned count in our favour.
Good luck, Jake.
Thank you.
Nicholas.
Yeah, sorry to go back, Jake, to that last class when the Sharks came here.
Yes.
Yeah. You did also mention Cameron had missed that game. And
Correct.
Defence was a bit
Correct.
of an issue. Obviously the Sharks lose forwards of carrying well under yesterday's.
Yeah, but he's not needed for that. So I told you, I said the one thing we missed today was there were certain gaps that appeared because we didn't have a player filling that gap. And that's what he does so well. Is he gets around and he makes players make decisions in places on the field that has a domino effect of how the outcome of that play ends. And, because he's so quick and he's like an extra athlete out there, when you go into multi-phase and he ends up 2nd or 3rd last, it's like having a backline player there. And then all of a sudden, You know, the guy who would have been exposed there is two players in on defence. And he's a lot more comfortable defending 2 in than he is second last. I'm talking about that player that he's now taken the place of. So I remember that game very, very well, in that there were the holes that came into places that I knew Cameron would have been there if he had played. I remember he pulled out right at the end. So it was like we trained and he was almost ready to go, and then I had to withdraw him. So, you know, I mean, it wasn't like we had prepared that during the week. We had thought he was going to be there to fill that gap, and that gap literally, and he wasn't there. So tomorrow will be different. If they play the same way, the Sharks, they won't get the same space they got because of the fact that he is so good at understanding how to close that space.
Thanks,
Jack, having attended obviously a lot of your press conferences this season, one of the things you talk an awful lot about is bringing back the Springboks that are overseas.
Yes.
When we look at the Sharks in terms of the Springboks, they have brought back Sia, that's Jensen,
Yes.
Koch,
You got enough paper? You got enough paper there?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because you can carry on writing.
It just strikes me, obviously the irony is they in a way they kind of where you want to be. So
Yeah.
are you sitting in a space in a space where you know
They're exactly where I
like
want to
a
be.
swap?
Yeah, exactly where I want to be. And what I meant by that is they're not necessarily where I would like to end, but they've shown you. There's 12 Springboks. Then you got if you work it out, the only backline player who isn't a Springbok is Ethan Hooker, and he's basically in the squad. And then Chichuka's not a Springbok, and he's in the squad. So the one guy who's been playing for them, James Venter, is the only guy in the whole squad that's not in the camp. Now that's what you need. So, I mean, I sort of say to you guys every week, we need to get to a point where, like Leinster and like those top teams, even the Glasgow's, and they've got internationals on their bench, and that's only going to come over time. So, you know, I'm not for 1 minute saying the Sharks are where I would like to be, and make sure we don't quote that as what I'm saying is, but I would like to be much better off than the Sharks. But the Sharks have obviously latched onto the fact that what they need is they need that caliber of player throughout their squad, and that's why I think they've improved like they have, because I think Sia said it this week that it's nice to have all these internationals and have all these players with lots of experience in and around their group. So that's where the Bulls want to get to. They want to get to a point where you've got Goosen, and next year Pollard, and then you've got 2 internationals at 10, and you've got Grobis and Akker, 2 internationals at hooker, and you've got Gerard and Hendrik, 2 international loosehead props. All of a sudden that just gives you so much more to your selection, but also just to the confidence in the group.
So we talk a lot about North versus South in the Stormers context, but this
they're not in this week, are they?
What I'm trying to say is this game has its own needle.
Yeah.
It always has, obviously since 1990. What sustains that needle now, in your opinion?
Yeah, I suppose the comments those guys in 1990 made, that I suppose fuels it. I remember Nas saying they won't win another Currie Cup in his lifetime. He's still alive. So I think it doesn't matter. Sharks have gone from coming in from the B section into one of the powerhouses of South African rugby. You guys aren't old enough. Some of you are, but not old enough to remember that when Keith Parkinson and Doc Late got them in from the B section, people couldn't believe that Natal were going to become an A section team. And then look where they are now. Springboks in every position. They've played in Super Rugby finals. They've won Currie Cups. They won the Challenge Cup. So it's not a case of needle, I think, Sim, to be fair. I just think it is. They've become a big union in South Africa, and they work hard to be where they are. That doesn't happen by default. If you look at the squad they put together, it's been through hard work. So I've got to be careful because I don't want you guys to write. It's not a needle. It's a derby game. It's there's always going to be, whether it was the Stormers or Western Province in the old days, or whether it was the glory days of Transvaal, like when Doc Late and Francois Pina and those guys were here. It goes in cycles, and now it's the Sharks, Bulls, and let's be fair, one of the pictures I have in my wall in my office is that fantastic final where the Bulls beat the Sharks in the Super Rugby final. That's, you talk about 1990, remember what an epic that was, you know. So I'm just glad that we can be part of rugby history against big teams, and that we can fill our stadium. I mean, I remember sitting here 3-4 years ago when COVID was on, and people wondered with the players' exodus and salary cap cuts and whether we'd ever be able to sit here and fill a stadium. And we've not only done that once, we've done that many times since then. I sat on Zoom calls with media. I never had a media guy, and I wondered if those days would ever come back. Today we've got television cameras and build up to semi-finals of URC. So I don't think it's just the Sharks. I think what it is, it's a congratulations to where we are in rugby, because the fact that it's sold out, and it's something that I've said to you, it's not surprising, is it? I mean, there's 12 Springboks in one team, and there's 11 Springboks or 10 Springboks in the other team, and that's what I said to you many times. When we get to big names playing against each other in big games, and then you will get 50,000 people to rugby, and it's happened. So, you know, congratulations to everyone who's been involved in making sure that we can get to what we used to have in the old days, because there are a lot of youngsters who never experience what they're going to experience on the weekend.
Last one for me. Last week you spoke about the psychology of the knockout games. You know,
Yes.
What thinking goes into a quarterfinal, semi-final, and final. And you kind of made the semi-final sound like a banana peel. When you
remember too many things, Sam. I wondered why you got a good memory.
Sorry to mention, the losing streak against these guys.
Yeah.
But
I want to tell you, 2022, we lost to them twice as well, and we beat them here in the quarterfinals. So who knows? Maybe it depends which history book you want to read.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
The question was obviously with banana peels in
Yes.
mind,
Yes.
and the talk around these guys being that they haven't actually clicked yet.
Yes.
Is that something that keeps you up at
Yeah.
night? that
Well, I
night
mean,
tomorrow?
because they got potential, of course it does. I mean, they got a good team, but as I said, it depends which history book you want to look at. You know, they beat us twice in 2022. We beat them in the quarterfinals. We got to the final. So, you know, I just want to also say just so we understand. I didn't say the semi is a banana peel. What I did say to you is that the semi-final is sometimes the hardest game to get players ready for, because the finals look after themselves. You know, quarterfinals you okay, but semi-finals it's just historically. It's got nothing to do with rugby. It's got nothing to do with the Bulls. It's got to do with sport in general. The semi-finals, whether it's a tennis game, you know, whether it's a football game, whether it's always the one where as a coach, it's one of those games where you either do too much or too little, and you never know which is the right thing until the game's finished. That's just the nature of, you put too much energy into the semis, you could lose the final. If you don't put enough energy into the semis, you could lose the semi-final. So it's one of those things as a coach that's why I think semis are so difficult to manage from a player and a coaching point of view. I hope that makes sense. Yes, Percival.
Thank you so much, Lunga.
Wanneer sê alles weer in Afrikaans dan?
No, I won't do that to you. You've got your hands full already, sir. Coach, can I ask you, sorry, ik praat met Engels. En Engels is my sterk punt.
Okay.
Can I give you before I ask my Afrikaans questions, can I ask you, you mentioned the number 51,000. I'm sure Lunga is going to confirm the number of tickets sold out is in full house, as in 51,000.
I think last I heard there were 6,000, 7,000 tickets left.
Okay, but I'm sure Lunga will confirm during the course of the day. Is it, ek vra elke keer hierdie vraag, jy het dit in Engels genoem, is dit 'n voorreg dan vir julle as 'n tuisspan om voor 'n vol huis te speel, meneer? In so 'n druk situasie?
Dis nie 'n druk situasie nie. Druk situasie as jy 'n rooi en 'n swart kabel het en jy moet weet wat se om te stay, anders dan ontplof jy dan. Dis druk situasie. Om sport te speel voor 50,000 mense is nie druk nie. Dis soos jy sê, dis 'n ongelooflike uitdaging en dis 'n voorreg. and you weet, Billie Jean King, I think, or someone is on the wall somewhere says, pressure is a privilege. And that's exactly it. It's of course, dis 'n voorreg. Voorreg vir hierdie spelers om te ervaar wat dit voel om voor 'n tuiskade voor 'n volpakte stadium te speel in 'n game waar jy jou beste kan speel. En jy weet die uitdaging vir elke speler en vir ons ook as coaches is hierdie games is waar jy op jou beste wil wees. Beste spelers wil man of the match wees in die grootste games. En as jy gaan kyk, jy weet, die spelers wat groot name in rugby geskryf het, is die spelers wat in hierdie games en die finale en in wêreldbeker wedstryde die man of the match is. En dit beteken, dis hoekom ek so opgewonde is.
En twee laaste vinnig Afrikaanse vraag. Jy praat van, jy gebruik die woord proewe in Engels trouwens. Hoekom dink jy hierdie wedstryd, veral tussen twee Suid-Afrikaanse spanne, groot Suid-Afrikaanse spanne, sogenaamde groot spanne, word soort van as proewe beskou in jou opinie as voormalige nasionale afgetrek?
Omdat gister die span uitgekondig was. Er was 'n squad gekies en sonder dat jy iets moet sê. En dis net natuurlik. As jy in 'n 45 of 'n 54 man squad gekies is om na 'n oefenkamp toe te gaan om vir die Bokke te speel, dan moet jy weet. En as 15 van die spelers wat in daai groep is wat teen jou gaan speel Saterdag, dan weet jy, dis al wil jy dit nie doen en dan weet jy dis proewe. So dis hoe my met die spelers gepraat het, hulle sê asseblief, moet dit nie individueel vat nie. Speel as 'n span. Vir my is dit meer belangrik wat jy gedoen het die laaste 18 weke, is hierdie hoekom jy gekies is. Moenie nou môre alles probeer in een game te doen om te wys hoekom jy in daai span gekies is nie, of in daai groep gekies is nie.
En dit laastens, coach, jy praat saam met my asof ek 'n graad 1 leerling is. As jy jou eerste
Jy wil hê of ek doen dit?
Ek wil jy moet praat as I'm a grade 1 pupil. As jy jou opdragspan kies, jou eerste 15 taal, dan aanvaar ek 'n afrotter sê, julle is die beste span om die wedstryd mee te begin en moontlik te wen. Johan Goosen wat dan onmiddellik begin op nommer 10, sê vir my, hy is die beste keuse op nommer 10 en nie iemand wat momentum aan sy kant het soos Keegan Johannes nie.
Ja. Okay, jy's in graad 1.
Yes.
So ek sal crayons gebruik om dit te verduidelik. Een ou is 'n springbok en die ander man is nou deur die stelsel en hy het baie goed gedoen. Een kan nie die hele game speel nie omdat hy beseer was en iemand moet dan die game klaarmaak. Okay, so wat sê een, sal jy as 'n graad 1 wil uitwerk, sal jy dit so omdoen. En dan sal jy sê 1 + 1 is 2. En dis reg, so 1 en 1 is 2.
Jy reken Goosen wat nie die momentum het as die beste opsie vir jou om sy ervaring.
Ek dink Jordan Hendricks het laasweek sy eerste game gespeel in 7 weke vir die Sharks en hulle het gewen. En hy het loskakel gespeel. So dit kan gedoen word.
Thank you so much, Nico. Thank you, coach.
Dankie.
Jake, I know it hasn't been officially announced, but obviously there's been reports that Marvin Ory
Yes.
back to the Bulls. I don't know what you can say, but this nightmare. So, are you guys finished with your recruitment yet, or are you still looking at?
It's actually very interesting. I would like to answer this because I think it's important. So, Piwe Shlomo is the coach of the Currie Cup. I've allowed him as director of rugby to have a look and see how he would like to play and who he'd like to coach and select. I think it's only fair. It's his second year in charge of the Currie Cup, and when it comes to who we can get, who can play, all that sort of stuff, I think I'd like him to develop with Edgar on a basis where he can. So I'm going to answer this by saying this to you: can we get a short-term contract? Can we pick club players? In other words, out of our clubs. How do we make sure we can be competitive with Currie Cup players? How do we make sure the URC players have rest? In other words, they have to have that rest. So to answer your question, Brent, are we finished? Probably not. Have we got what we want? Probably not. And I suppose more importantly, I wouldn't, not because I don't know, not because I don't want to know, I wouldn't want to talk until Piwe has got his whole plan together. So those names will get chucked up and, like anything, can he, can't he, is he in contract, how much is he, can we do this deal, can't we do that deal, those things are all fluid as you know. So there will be a lot of, between now and when the Currie Cup pre-season starts, which will be Piwe's baby, then he will be able to sit with you and say who he's got, who he hasn't got to, because you can imagine, as I said, it's fluid and it changes from week to week.